Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Crash Couch. I'm your host, Chris, and today I have another line of people you should probably know if you were a long-time listener. We have Joel from last week. Joel, how are you?
I am doing great. Happy holidays! Yes, it's almost 2021, thereabouts.
Oh, I'm so glad. We also have joining us for the first time this season, we have Ernie. Ernie, how are you?
How you doing, Baratna?
Doing well.
Thanks for
Good
having
accent.
me again, buddy.
And we also have Ian. Ian, how are you?
Hey, I'm pretty good.
I'm really upset that you didn't do it in your voice that you were doing before we were recording.
What voice was I doing?
It was the really deep, like,
Hey,
I'm back coming to the Crash Couch voice.
Hey, everyone. It's great to be back on the Crash Couch.
Well, it is good to have both of you back. Do you have any thoughts on how the season is playing out since you weren't here for the last episode?
I do, yes. So this is the only book in the Expanse that I've read twice because I read the first 5 books and then I just didn't read them for a long time. And then I thought I ordered book 6, but I actually ordered book 5 again. And on top of that, I accidentally ordered it twice. So there was a period of time where I had 3 copies of this book and I read it twice. And so I'm very familiar with the story. And I was watching with my wife and I was just like, what episode are the asteroids going to hit? Like, and they don't really hit till, if you read the books, it's like halfway-ish through the book. And so it's about close to the same. And so it is definitely like everyone going out on their own paths. It's a little slow to start, but then this episode hits and it's just like, oh, and you feel emotions. I don't think it's going to stop until the finale. Like this is going to be crazy.
So it made an impact on you, Ian. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it made a deep impact.
Made a splash.
Ernie, how about you?
I'm going to repeat what I said in our messaging thing. The episodes have been really good, but really slow. This episode 4 got to a point where I was watching it really late at night, and my wife was on the couch watching her phone because she's not into The Expanse. And just basically when the crap starts to hit the fan, I like pushed myself up out of my seat really quickly. You know, my heart started pounding really fast. But like I kind of did it in this really herky-jerky, it looked like it was a tweaker. Because it's such an exciting moment because the season has been so slow that this episode just like hit the jets. But this season has been great. It's given us a lot of fat to chew on, but this was like you are actually getting to the actual cooked meat, you know, perfectly medium rare, so juicy. It's just so good.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's more of a burnt steak, but you know, asteroids can do that. But yeah, listen, millions of people have died. You know, one of my favorite characters, Fred Johnson, while he was assassinated, killed, murdered, however you want to describe it, right? Okay. And we only got like one quasi-bar scene this whole episode. You know, it's sad. That's like the officer mess, right? When they actually witnessed the Watchtower's satellite system take down the 4th asteroid.
One thing that you mentioned, Ernie, is how you kind of felt that the first 3 episodes were a little slow, and then you got to this one and it sort of just ramped up the action. That's one thing I wanted to kind of ask you guys about, because I saw somebody talking about how The Mandalorian, which is a Star Wars show, if you are unfamiliar with that. First of all, what rock are you living under, or what planet are you living on if you've not heard of The Mandalorian and you're not watching it? But a lot of people mentioned that show has a lot of filler to it, and there might be an episode where the Mandalorian goes to a planet and this like saves the day or goes on a mission or something, and then it doesn't really like advance the overall plot. Why do you think that The Expanse can get away with episodes where they don't directly advance the plot in a major way, but The Mandalorian can't?
I think a lot of it has to do with it's a complicated story because with The Mandalorian, we're following technically one character. It's revolved around him. So it's almost like you see the world through his eyes. Whereas the Expanse, it is literally taking the vastness of space and this expansion of, you know, where we are in the future. And we're following not only the expansion of it through the spaceships, but you're looking at the politics side of it. You're looking at the black market side, which is this episode really started to get heavy into what actually is happening with the black market. You're looking at the anger of people that felt like they've been pushed down all their lives starting to rise up and their plan coming to fruition. So I think even though the first 3 episodes were slow, there's no such thing as filler in The Expanse. It all serves a purpose, and there's a reason why they show certain things. The story itself is not just character development, it's a story development. And I feel like with this episode, even though it's probably my favorite one, there's a lot of moments, I think, even in the first 3 episodes that I can look back and say, like, wow, that really says a lot about Holden, or even that says a lot about Amos, especially Amos. I feel like Amos is a big focal point this year, this season, even in his journey. And it's just an awkward, slow journey, right? Like, he is going back to the area he grew up in. We know nothing about Amos as far as, like, the show goes. I'm not sure what they've exposed in the books, but just watching him kind of walk through this old neighborhood where he grew up, you start to put these pieces together, and they're very essential pieces to his character. And also, it's another part of The Expanse through Amos's eyes. So I feel like there's a ton of character, and everything serves a purpose. It's not just telling one person's story. It's how this story is advancing the world is probably the way I could summarize it the best.
That was very well said, Ernie. I look at it, it's a slow burn. It's supposed to be a space noir / opera. And with this episode, the 4th episode, we get, oh my God, we get not the slow burn, we get the payoff, we get the burn, right? And it comes down in so many ways, and it's awesome. And I think what made this episode so powerful, I don't want to say impactful because we've used that joke several times already, but what basically triggered our emotions is the fact that, yes, we just spent 3 episodes with the character building. We were this slow, meandering plot. We've seen it develop in pieces and glances of where it's going to go, and then bang! Oh my God, this is the payoff. I just found that fascinating. And Amos, I got a lot to say about Amos on this episode, so I'll leave that for a bit.
I have nothing to add. I think they covered it.
Yeah, I think that it's a really weird comparison to make, I know, just because, they're both different types of shows. And you're right that The Mandalorian does really focus a lot on a very small amount of characters versus The Expanse, which, has not only our main crew that we're all used to, but multiple factions, and then multiple people within those factions, and then multiple goals within those factions. It's a bad comparison, I know, but it's still worth repeating, because you really can't have a show be so drawn out and be successful most of the time. Like, if it was still in sci-fi, they wouldn't be able to do this. And I think it's just is another reason. I know we always talk about, the move to Amazon and how much of a good thing it's been for the show. And I think this is just another reason why, because I feel like before, maybe they would have tried to condense what happened in the first 3 episodes into like 1.5 episodes. And then we would have got the asteroid stuff in this one in like the later half of the 2nd episode or something along those lines. So I think we should be kind of thankful for that The Expanse doesn't have to rely on something like that.
Yeah, completely agree.
You can tell, Chris, that you weren't born in the 1970s. Okay, slow pacing was where it's at for so many years.
Yeah,
and maybe I'm old enough so I can appreciate it, but I love the show.
One of the things I've noticed too is they do seem to focus on a certain emotion season by season. Don't get me wrong; there's tons of emotions that are played, but this one, I feel like the theme of this season has been frustration. Frustration that the crew is separate. There's frustration about the politics that are happening to Avasarala and just her journey and trying to expose the truth. The frustration of this plan that we're about to discuss in this episode, how it comes into fruition for the belt and the OPA. Because I felt like frustration from 1 through 3, and then this one just really, I feel like pissed me off so much because I want something to be done about it. they do a good job of just focusing on this one emotion. Yeah, there's tons more in there, but this really seems to be the theme for this season, I think.
Yeah, I think you're completely right there. Reading the books, I guess maybe I felt less frustration, but watching it, that's a really, you kind of nailed it. I realized what I was feeling as I was watching it was this underlying frustration with just like, it's the buildup of like what's going to happen and already me knowing what's going to happen and like just waiting for it to happen. And it is also very much like, okay, where are we going? Where is this all going? You know, they tease it in the first episode where you see the asteroid get broken up, but you still don't really know what's going to happen. Everything is felt out of focus, and it's all been like hyper focused. And now we realize what the season's all about.
Yeah. And we especially get it with the very end of the episode when we have Marco's speech. It's kind of funny because the other night I was watching a reaction. There's this YouTube channel called Blind Wave, and they do reaction videos to shows and movies and stuff. They started with The Expanse, I think, a month ago. And I think they've released up to like episode 6 or something of season 1. And just to kind of see the tension between all of the characters and what's going on, even back in season 1, like to sort of have that in the back of your mind and then see where it is now, it kind of just all makes sense. And even though that wasn't really like the core issue at the time of season 1, it still just flows together, and it's the natural way of doing things. It's not like they tried to wrap up, you know, a previous storyline and was like, oh, well, we still have 5 other books to write. Let's see, you know, let's just make up something from, you know, just what fits. It all fits.
Yeah, the writing is incredible
and consistent, which is super important, I think, for me.
And it's weird too because we didn't get a lot of changing out between our characters' storylines this time. I know we started off with Alex and Bobby on the Screaming Firehawk, as it's titled now, which I think is pretty cool.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I think at the very beginning of the episode when it's flying and it has like the ship name, it's called the Screaming Firehawk now.
I never caught that. That's cool.
I didn't either. That's funny.
I caught it. It's great. It's amazing. I saw it the first time. It's been renamed. Yes.
But like that's like we get, you know, a few minutes with them and that's literally it. But the funny thing is that that's just how it fits. Like there's obviously a lot more going on than their mission. And, you know, they don't have anything to really, like, they're not just shoving scenes in with them. Like, we get something at the beginning and that's it. Like, I kind of forgot that they were even, you know, here until I rewatched the episode.
Yeah.
Just because there's not, like, we know where they're at and they're still on that bit of a journey. And that kind of segues us into them learning about what's happening on Earth. I just like how it all fits.
You notice there's actually dread watching this episode, especially if you're looking at it through an American eyes, because there's similarities with this episode, say, to the 9/11 attack, right? So you have one asteroid hits Earth, or you have one plane that's, you know, slams into the World Trade Center, right? Okay, was it an accident? What's happening? Is this nature just being nature? No, you have to wait until the second impact to know that, hey, it's an attack. It's an attack, and this is why, you know, Avasarala was so adamant. It's an attack. She knew it. Her instincts was right in this case.
Yep. And
then we have the political extremists at the very end of this episode give this speech, right? Very much in line of Osama bin Laden after the 9/11 attacks in terms of speeches being traded around on a cassette player, like cassette tapes, right? From his caves in Afghanistan and places like that in Pakistan. Very powerful stuff. And even like the plane escort with like Air Force One versus the United Nations president, right? And you see there's actually 2 fighter escorts as well, which happened during 9/11 as well in terms of Air Force One.
Yeah.
That's how they do things, right? There's a lot of parallels and juxtapositions going on in this episode.
That's a really good point there, Joel. I completely agree, and I was wondering why the feeling felt familiar. Yeah, that's great.
Can I just speak about Amos? Just, you know, because Amos goes to jail today, right? In this episode, he goes visits his buddy Peaches, right? By the surface,
nice to see her again.
Yeah,
Very nice to see her, right? Okay.
Awesome.
I was, what's her real name? Carissa? What's
Clarissa Mao.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so the only reason why Amos is alive is because he decided to show some empathy and go visit another troubled soul, which he has some sort of bonding with or some sort of comradeship with. Because if not, he would have been on the surface and he would have been smacked by the asteroid or the fallout from the asteroid.
Yeah, that's true.
And yet, and you look at this at the end of the episode, and we both see the more of that in the next episode, no doubt. It's almost like Earth itself has become a prison, and that people are fleeing the prison, right? And you compare that or contrast that to Marco's speech at the very end of it, right, where his last line was all about freedom. The bulges are free, 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 free. Whereas the Earthers, well, the planet is now a prison. They're trying to get off as fast as possible because we haven't even got the whole nuclear winter yet, right? It's not a good place to be. Lots of different contrasts.
One of the things I wanted to point out about Amos's journey is, so like the term psychopath isn't like what most people think. It's like that term where they think killer. The term psychopath actually just means a person's inability to sympathize with another human being. In a sense, like Amos has been a psychopath throughout the first 4 seasons, and I'm pretty sure in the book as well. But it's so bizarre and shows very much a character growth of Amos as the show has progressed, and even just how he's been accepted by a crew. Like, he is an essential piece to that crew. But to see him kind of give back, he doesn't know what he's doing. He just knows he has to go do something and visit, and just the sympathy that he's been giving back is very, very foreign to him. But, why would he go visit Clarissa? To see him kind of deal with these emotions and start to open up a little bit is really cool to watch. Because Amos has been one of my favorite characters. Because he's so complicated because he doesn't show any emotions. But for him to show these emotions that he doesn't know how to express, he just knows that in order to do them, is how he can express it. And that conversation he had with Mao was pretty eye-opening. Just kind of like, I don't know, I guess I'm here to help you. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he's trying, So it's just a cool character development for Amos.
Mm-hmm. One of the things to think about too is the fact that now Amos is trapped underground in the pit with a ton of crazy people with body modifications. So episode 5 is going to be interesting.
It's his happy place. It'd be great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. a true test of his abilities as a non-modded human.
I'm not sure it's possible, but Amos is becoming less psychopath, less of a psychopath, because we really see that in his actions in this episode, right? He's showing vulnerability towards Peaches. That's amazing, right? The true psychopath of this episode is, of course, Marco. Mm-hmm. Marco Amneris. He's the guy who doesn't sympathize or empathize with anyone else but himself.
Mm-hmm.
I would kind of disagree with that one a little bit, because I do think he's doing this for the belt. Obviously, I think there's a little bit of glory in there for him, and he's very much driven by that. But I do think it's like the oppression that the belt has felt for years that has kind of pushed him to that moment. So I get what you're saying, but I kind of disagrry. Maybe
it's a convenient vehicle for him to use to channel his own personal issues, right? Because he's narcissist, and I can't say the word. He's a narcissist, right? Okay, it's all about him, right? Yeah. It's all about him, right? And so he can latch on to any political fight, and to a certain degree, you mean to believe it and be passionate about it, right? So I can see your point as well, but I think sometimes it just boils down to personalities and our own issues in life.
Yeah, and latching on to that, I'll be the one that tries to say the name of the episode. I think it's Gaugamela. Guacamole. It is referring to the Battle of Gaugamela, in which, and I think it's referencing that this, not because Alexander the Great, it's not about tactics used or anything. I think it's actually referencing the fact that in this battle, Alexander the Great won a ton of territory. And Marco, at the end of this episode, is like, everything that is outside of your respective atmospheres now belongs to the belt. It's not even like we're independent of you, like stop, like leave us alone. It's just like as soon as you enter atmosphere, you're in Belter territory, and it's ours. It's a really freaking big deal to claim all of space.
Yeah, he doesn't have an ego, does he? Right?
Nah.
Yeah, I know we've already jumped ahead to the end, but just that speech is probably one of my favorite moments of the show so far, just because it's so intimidating and it's so gargantuan. Like, I mean, you can just it's easy to just go and say things like it's like that episode of The Office where Michael's like, I declare bankruptcy. And then somebody says, I think it's Oscar says, just because you say something doesn't make it true. And he's like, I didn't say it, I declared it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what Marco is doing here. Obviously it's going to have its consequences, and it's not just him declaring it. It's probably going to be a big deal, as you said.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder too how many people in the belt are going to be like, who the hell's this guy? Like what?
Yeah.
Like I was telling Kelsey, I was like, him and the Free Navy are kind of like ISIS within the belt. They're this like very clear kind of like terror organization.
There's a little bit of Hitler in there too, because he's bringing, like, Hitler brought hope to Germany. After World War I, that country was in shambles. You could say the belt has been in shambles for years and years and years, and this guy's finally bringing hope and kind of uniting them all under one. But this guy, stamping a big flag in the middle of space, saying, "Well, this is ours."
Yeah, and killing
declaring himself
millions. So I mean, if we're talking about Hitler, and I think this episode didn't get into final numbers, but it's a very high number.
And by the way, a big heads up, or at least a big thumbs up to the casting, because the choice of who they chose for Marcos, I don't see any other guy playing him. Like he's like a good looking dude, but he's also kind of got this crazy look to him when he it's almost like his pupils dilate when he starts speaking. I love the moment right before they hit the camera to record and send the message. He's like kind of has his eyes closed, and then all of a sudden the camera comes on and he opens and he immediately kind of goes into character. Like he plays that off so well. They've done a good job with choosing Philip, because he looks like a good blend of Marcos and also Naomi.
He really does. Yeah.
I like, even his swagger and cockiness, and even there's a bit of immaturity in him, just kind of this wanting to please dad kind of attitude. But they did another great job choosing those people for this episode, or just even for the season.
Yeah, I think that casting was spot on. I want to say it was Dominique posted somewhere on social media the other day a picture of the three of them, and it's just like behind the scenes, and it was really weird to see it, because I was like, you could see them as a true family.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't know and somebody was like, oh, are all of these people related? You would probably say, well, probably. Like the casting is just excellent. Very well done. I'll say too that speaking of Naomi, it was like she didn't get a ton of screen time in this episode, but what we did see is just A+ acting on Dominique's part, just because like there's this part where I think when she gets locked in the door or locked inside somewhere, and she's screaming, open the door or don't let me in or something along those lines, and she starts screaming at the start of the sentence, but by the end she's just sort of like this soft screech, like just like sadness and disappointment and anger, and just all these emotions are just in that one line. Oh, it really got me, especially the second time that I watched it. Just top of the line writing and just a great performance from her.
Yeah, it's
completely
1,000% believable. Like it just it felt so real. It was really raw. And super heartbreaking. Like I think being a parent kind of helps with that, being able to understand the emotional connection to a kid, even if you haven't had contact with this kid for a long time, like coming back and just facing rejection from the kid, and then finding out that your kid is like almost the one responsible for murdering millions of Earthers. It's just like, I don't even know. Like, so I think the writing and the acting on Dominique's part is just like good. Underlined 3 times.
Another thing I noticed too was how really this season is just talking about not all of our characters, but with Alex and Amos and Naomi, we all have them dealing with family in some kind of regard. Not so much Holden and Bobby and Avasarala, but it's nice to kind of see that theme looked at and through the eyes of some of our characters, especially since that just gives us more background material for them.
Yeah. Well, Holden's got to be worried about his family.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. And then I don't think he'd consider Fred Johnson family, but they were really close.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was reading the book, when Fred Johnson was killed, it was just like, what? Like,
yeah,
it's just because he's not really in last season a ton. You get him back and you're like, oh, it's Fred. And then he's killed. It's just like, oh,
bye,
come
Fred.
on.
I was shocked when that happened.
Yeah. Complete surprise. Just the betrayal and, being able to kind of catch last minute that something's wrong and not being able to do anything about it. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Something about the graphics too, I wanted to point out. Now, I remember feeling this feeling when I watched the Matrix trilogy, that they kept doing scenes or shots and special effects that I think after a while kind of got boring. Like, it wasn't brand new. Every time they do something in space where somebody's shot and like bleeding out, it's very graphic, but it's such a like mind-bending thing to watch, and it doesn't get tiring. It's tiring because it's a human getting killed and bleeding out, but like just to watch it is just like, oh my God, like watching Fred floating there while he's bleeding out was just like, whoa.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I think for the visual effects are incredible. And there's one shot in this episode too, right before Fred is killed, where you have people that look like they're walking upside down, and you have somebody on the floor, in quotes, like working on something, and then the camera slowly like tilts so that eventually the people upside down are right side up, and then you're in Fred's office. And I think the show's always done a really good job with showing, like, portraying zero G. This season in particular, I think, has done a killer job, and that was really, really interesting to see. Even just them like floating Fred's body, like when they're like, get him to gravity, and they're just kind of just floating along.
Dude, one of my favorite shots in this whole episode also was it's almost like something clicks in Holden when he's like got a mission now, like he's ready to go, and the gun's floating, and he just like captures it right as he's walking by. Dude, I love that shot, but there was so much happening even for, I think, Holden's character that I love, because Holden's kind of had this religious experience happen to him.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk about this in real life when they've had this religious experience happen to them. It's almost like they want to go back to that and dedicate their lives to finding that again. You hear about it when people try to find nirvana through meditation. I think Holden sometimes wants to get back to feeling like he has something important to do. And watching him kind of float along the first 3 episodes, and then when some drama kicks in, it's, he finally gets going again. He watched Naomi leave him to go do her mission, but he's almost like trying to find purpose again. I feel like Holden is really trying to get back to that religious experience. So when crap hits the fan for him, it's almost like he wakes up. I love seeing that.
Yeah, it's like something clicks inside him.
Yeah.
I definitely got that vibe too. Yeah, especially once he walks in and sees that Fred's dead, and he closes his eyes. Just that look on his face. Oh, it gives me chills just because I would not want to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, and like he said, I think, what does he say? He deserved to finish what he was building.
Yep.
And I agree, because Fred was a very noble. Is that the right word?
I think he's more of a character. He was practical.
Yeah, and
pragmatic. He was a very pragmatic politician.
Yeah, what he was trying to build, I think, is the opposite of what Marcos is doing. He wanted to have, like, a bona fide space government, And then, Marcos comes in, murders him, murders a bunch of people on Earth, and kind of creates a weird vacuum of Wild West in the space.
What do you guys think of this rat story that started this episode out with Bobby telling her childhood experience of having a pet rat? But rats usually live that long in the wild. So that when they grow old, they develop all types of tumors that makes death very painful. And how Bobby reacted to that emotionally and eventually just closed the box and got on with her life. To me, that's just set the tone of this episode, because there's so much death and mayhem in this episode. Even, the husband of Avasarala, he's missing. He was supposed to be in New York City, which is not on the water, right? It doesn't look good. It just, to me, who's the rats? And is it the rats on Earth? Are they the ones trying to get off the sinking ship? The metaphors are just so, apparent at a macro level and as a micro level as well. So the small and the large.
Yeah, and I think she's helping him with that story kind of realize he's got to bury his idea of what Mars is. Because it's absolutely not that anymore. It might have been at one time. I'm sure corruption existed within the Mars government when he was serving. But, now with the black market, it's completely changed. They're not terraforming Mars anymore. And so whatever he thought Mars was is gone. And he needs to get over that.
Yeah, a few seasons back, I remember too, there was a scene where Bobby was doing some training, and through the helmet, she kind of visualized what the terraforming would look like on Mars. And that kind of like really drives home the point of that the dream of Mars is dead.
Yeah.
And that scene was actually really sad to just watch. And by the way, Bobby killed it on that too with the acting. That analogy of building a coffin for Mars and having her tell it to Alex and almost like saying, catch up. Like, this is where my emotions are. This is where we need to be. This is what we're doing, was just really heavy. I almost felt like my breath, like I needed to breathe after that because I was holding it, just listening to her story about it.
And not to mention, apparently, and this was just in one line of dialogue, the Parliament of Mars was attacked as well, right? There was a series of bombings, I think I remember from the books. So that was mentioned very briefly. So the Free Navy is not holding back their punches at all towards Mars.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good spot to have that at the very beginning of the episode, just because you're right, it really did sort of just set things up, even if it was a little indirect about it. Just put it in the back of our minds.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff in this episode that is setting up the rest. I think setting up episode 5, but also the rest of the season. It's like it kind of goes towards the idea of there's not really any wasted space in any of these episodes. I'm excited to see what happens with a particular character down in the pit that was kind of called out. There was a guy working out, and the officer down there said that he's down there. It's optional, and he's chosen to stay down there. And she kind of calls him out and says his name or something. I think we're going to see more of him. I got a feeling. So I'm excited to see episode 5. Assuming that episode 5 is spent with Amos. I don't know if that's going to be true. What's the episode title for 5?
It will be
Enchiladas.
It's called
pronounce again.
It's called Enchiladas?
No. It's Down and Out.
Down and Out? Yeah. Down and Out, it's got to be Amos.
Yeah. So that will be episode 5 of season 5, and looks like there's 10 episodes in this season.
Oh, good.
According to Wikipedia.
Cool. Yeah, Down and Out, assuming that is talking about going down into the pit and trying to get out of the pit.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, are you happy now too that they're doing the weekly releases?
Oh yeah, I mentioned that on the last episode too. It's excellent. I love it so much.
You know what's funny? Real quick, I was looking up. I was like, why is this on Amazon? It's got 4 stars, which is weird. And you look, and there are hundreds of 1-star reviews from people who don't want it released weekly.
Well, I don't blame them.
Yeah, and which is funny because it's like there's obviously like a split in the fandom of people who just want
Mm-hmm.
who are used to seeing it on Amazon and want to binge it like every other show, and then there's us who are like, wait, we got a podcast, we don't have enough time for this, we need the time.
Yeah.
And there is that live tweeting culture, you know, that is, I think,
Sonny
probably
boy?
in the minority of watchers, but still pretty crucial to the fandom.
Yeah, I absolutely love that they dropped the first 3 episodes, and then everything else is going to be weekly, which the last episode will be on February 3rd, which it'll honestly probably will be on February 2nd because they are tending to release these things in the evening of the day before. So probably be that. But yeah, I love it. What I like about it is that if I can anticipate the fact that assuming that all of the episodes will be released early than what they are intended, which I'm pretty sure that that's how it's going to be. It's so nice just to be able to come home from the day and, you know, around 7-8 o'clock my time, just be able to open up Amazon on my TV and start watching it, and not like most people haven't seen it yet. And, you know, I'm not the spoiler type, so I'm not going to just, you know, openly tweet spoilers about it. Unlike another show that I watch where I have to stay up until 2 a.m. if I want to avoid any kind of spoilers and be able to go on the internet freely. Yeah, I love it so much. And unfortunately, I've not really been able to do any live tweeting, and I don't think that'll change unless anything crazy happens. But it's still really nice to see that people are able to do that still and not have to worry about, oh, well, you know, there's no point in talking about what happened in episode 4 because, you know, something crazy happens in episode 5, and oh yeah, well, the finale is already out there, so, you know,
Right.
There's no point.
Yeah,
And you're right, it does make us podcasters our lives a lot easier.
exactly. Yeah. The live tweeting thing, I think I'm probably not going to do that. I'll give my thoughts on an episode, you know, and use the appropriate episode hashtag. But now that my wife is caught up and we watch it together, I'm not like live tweeting the whole time because
Yeah.
I'm trying to like watch and be present with her.
Dude, that scene also I wanted to talk about too was when Avasarala is actually talking to Gao on the plane.
Oh yeah.
Dude, that scene was crazy.
Yeah. I immediately got, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show Designated Survivor. That is immediately what I thought of whenever that happened. Because especially, I think it was right after that crash, Avasarala is told that, you know, they don't know who is next in line of succession. Like half of the cabinet was on the plane or on the ship or whatever it was. And it was just really crazy to think about. Like, it's funny because in our last recording, I mentioned that Avasarala really didn't have, you know, a lot of anxiety and a lot of emotions really in those episodes. Like she didn't have to say a lot of swear words, but this really changed. Like she's back to the character that we're used to.
Yeah, I thought it was very clever of her to call the chef to get Nancy's attention. And I love that she goes, "Of course I know who you are. You fattened me up on macaroons for like 2 years or whatever." I thought that was a funny line.
I love how the chef just made a sandwich. It wasn't like anything fancy.
I know.
It was just a sandwich.
Here's your sandwich, Nancy. Also,
It's got avocado though.
yeah.
I like the fact that if you're a passenger on that plane, right, you know you're not going to survive the shockwave, right? It's the absolute terror, the shock. Yeah, you missed the blast, but there's a shockwave coming. And what a way to go out, right? And the official leader of the UN, so the Gao character, right? Even her protection's like, get down, get away from the windows. Like that's going to help.
I know.
Yeah, they're trying to do their job to the very last end, right?
Yeah, that was a very just crazy and sad and futile thing to watch. Just like inescapable.
It
And
makes
he gets-
me wonder though if, you know, by Avasarala discovering what was actually happening, that they were using stealth tech and why they couldn't detect it. It makes me wonder if Gao would have given more to Avasarala or if not, you know, as far as even just her position.
Yeah, just kind of like, oh, thanks for this information. Back to your fake jail that I've put you in.
Yeah, because, I mean, she said that, and we know she did. She saved millions more lives by her persistence. So.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm not even going to pretend I know what happens, obviously. We'll see what happens with Avasarala. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, I have a question for you guys. Do you think Fred Johnson will be alive today? Well, you know what I mean, so to speak, if he wasn't in possession of the proto-monocle, at least a sample of it?
Ooh.
Because
yeah, I think if he didn't have the proto-molecule, he would not have been a target.
Yeah, it would be just another bolter.
At least maybe
right?
not during this initial attack.
Yeah,
I think you're also assuming that he would still be alive up to this point without it.
true. That's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because he kept it in his quarters, right, in his cabin. That's kind of cool. Oh, let's talk about the crab robot thing, the red crabby thing. What do you guys made of? Oh my god, that was
on that. It was cool.
It was cool. It was neat. Yeah, for a TV show, it was first class.
Yep. And I think this is something that's interesting too from a sound design perspective, especially if we're comparing like The Mandalorian versus The Expanse. While both are sci-fi, one is very much more grounded in reality. So it's really cool to see a robot like that sounds very much like you would expect it to sound. And there's not really any crazy out there sounds coming out of it. Like with so much of Star Wars stuff, you have like, this is an engine and it's an engine that sounds freaking awesome. With this, it's like, oh, it's a robot and it sounds like a robot doing robot.
Also, there wasn't any techno music playing.
It's true. There was no like,
yeah,
there was no Death Trooper or Dark Trooper.
I'm joking because the Mandalorian had awesome music when the Dark Troopers showed up, but this was super dramatic and just sound effect heavy.
But yeah, it was really cool. And there's little things I appreciated, like, when they were going back and forth between Holden and I don't know if we know her name. I forget her name. The person who's working on the ship Kai. As they're shifting, Sakai, thank you. As they're going back and forth, you can hear what the robot's doing in your left ear and then in your right ear and then your left ear as the perspective is changing. So there's just little things
cool.
like that I really appreciate as somebody.
And you would never notice that unless you were probably wearing headphones, right?
Yeah, definitely easier to pick.
Really
definitely easier to
awesome
pick up,
system.
but it's just good sound design. This whole episode, the music, the sound was so good. Like the meteors hitting Earth, super impactful, huge sounds. The loudest. Those are like the loudest moments in the episodes. All the guns are just super punchy and like you feel like you're getting hit in the gut as you're hearing them. So it was just so good.
The only thing about the robot that I did not like was that, and I think this is just a thing with sci-fi, especially one that's grounded in our reality. When it comes to firing guns at robots, I never understood that. Why would you shoot a gun, like a regular gun, at a robot? I mean, I feel like that's not going to do anything. It's just going to waste time and waste ammo.
I feel like it's just one of those, like, what else are you going to do?
I feel like if you actually were in that situation, Chris, you'd be firing.
Oh, yeah. I definitely would.
I would.
I definitely would. Hopefully, I never have to get in that kind of situation in my lifetime.
I'm sending you a robot right now.
And then Holden tried to take that piece of metal and just shove it in. And it reminded me of, I don't know, that part reminded me of like General Grievous from Star Wars Episode 3, even though that's not what Obi-Wan does to kill him. It gave me that kind of vibe. But I'm like, well, I don't know, that just felt a little, that part was probably the only weird thing. It just felt not out of place, but it just felt a little, I don't know, cheesy. The way that was shot and set up was just a very, no pun intended, but felt very robotic from Stephen Strait doing it as Holden. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe I'm just being too picky in that regard, or I missed something, but that's how I saw it.
I didn't really have an opinion on that other than, guns don't work, grab a stick. He tried. And apparently it's a smart robot.
Yeah, he was even like moving his arms to like get the protomolecule sample through the doorway, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
If we're nitpicking, can I just say that I thought the woolen storage bay, all the containers, that was amazing CGI.
Yes.
Yeah, container upon container, or right? Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, that was a cool shot.
It's weird to be talking about the protomolecule again too, because I feel like especially we've not really talked about it too much since season 3. Like a little bit in season 4, but it hasn't been the focus really since the 3rd season. And it's kind of, I mean, we'll see what happens in the rest of the season if that's something that gets back into the forefront of the story, which I wouldn't be surprised if it does, but just is really interesting to kind of see that pop up again.
Yeah, it is interesting, and just hoping it stays in that container. Yes,
because I don't think we need more protomolecule out in the world again. We don't need another. What was it? Eros? Was that the station that was covered in it? Yeah, I don't think we need another Eros incident.
No.
Oh, back in the carefree days of season 2.
Back when things was so simple.
Yeah. I remember just a funny story. Back in that time we had screeners from SciFi, and I was working in a museum at the time, and we would record our episodes prior to them being shown on SciFi for Crash Couch. And I was watching that while I was working at the museum. No one was in there. And like all of this stuff was happening, like with Miller and Julie and, his unfortunate demise. And I'm just like sitting there and just like this, just so many emotions going on. I'm like, man, I really hope no one walks in this museum right now, because they're just going to see this random dude sitting at a desk crying or wanting to cry over some fictional character. But those were the days. Hopefully the protomolecule won't make me cry this time.
Hopefully not.
Yes, Chris. Why so blue?
Very funny.
Too bad. So sad. What? Now I couldn't believe that was a line in this show.
Yeah,
Like,
I was
I can't
waiting
believe
for it
that
to
Sakai
go into
said
some like children's nursery rhyme from that,
Yeah.
or like some Belter nursery rhyme.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that thought too, because I was like, it did seem like out of place with the exceptional writing elsewhere. And then I kind of just thought, like, Sakai sees that this is probably the end of the line for her. She probably thought maybe she could get out, and her brain is just kind of starting to shut down, especially after that. So it's just like this, like, whatever's left of her is like barely there in this moment. And so all she can get out is not a clever speech. It's just this, you lost.
Which is crazy because her plan, or at least like she was a big, cog piece in the plan, is so technical.
Yeah.
It's just even what she does is technical. I'm almost wanting to see what she did to the Rocinante. I wonder if there's anything in part of her plan that had to do anything with like disabling the Rocinante or, putting some sort of virus in the computer system for it. But yeah, just to have her in this one moment where she could have said something that blew our minds, said, too bad. So sad.
So sad.
Yeah, she engineered her own fate.
She did.
Well, I think we've gone for almost an hour now. Any closing thoughts about this episode you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, payback. That's where it's at. Let's get up, the Earthers and the Martians, and get back in the game. Get back on that horse.
Yeah, I feel like I really want some justice, because the 4 episodes, I was just waiting for something to happen. And this episode was just an explosion of, let's get him back,
Yeah, I think you got what you want with that, Ernie. You definitely got, that action.
And don't get me wrong, because I do. But actually, one of my favorite things in the Expanse itself is the politics. I've never been a politic guy, and never been that person to seek out that stuff. But just watching how politics play out in this space novel show is probably the most interesting thing. But to have something chaotic happen, I think it's just fun. Also, it just really gets the mind going. Like, oh, let's do this.
Yeah. And speaking of politics, that does kind of talk about Avasarala here, because I have a hunch that she's going to have to be in some kind of higher position than what she was currently used to. So we'll see how that plays itself out again.
I think she would be a great minister of education. Just saying.
I'm really excited about where the rest of the season is going to go. I don't know that we're going to have any more episodes that just kind of feel slow.
I don't get that vibe. And, I've not read the book, so I don't know what's coming, but just from the setup, I don't get that vibe.
Slow, fast, doesn't matter. It's all good.
Yeah. I think that is a good way to end it then. So if you all want to follow us on Twitter, you can find the podcast Twitter at Crash Couch. My Twitter is at The Curse of Chris. Joel, where can people find you online?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Joel_Welch. So JOEL_WELCH. I also have my own podcast called the SciFi Pubcast, where we endeavor to have bar-like conversations talking about themes in science fiction and pop culture. It's quirky. Very, very quirky.
Ernie, you no longer have Twitter, but where can people find you if they want to chat with you about this?
Yeah, I got rid of my Twitter. But if you guys really want to find me out or find where I'm at, I'm on the corner of Instagram. I'm actually on Instagram at Your Buddy Ernie. And also I do a podcast with Chris and Joel talking about The Mandalorian. And as we so briefly thrown into this episode, it's called Mando Night Football.
Oh, yeah, I'm on that one as well. Yeah, go. Mando Night Football. Great podcast. Listen to it now.
And Ian, where are you living at these days?
Mostly on Twitter at Bearded ASMR, where it's not all about ASMR, but mostly audio and sound design and my kids, and also ASMR.
And beards, apparently.
And beards, nice. Always.
All right, everyone. Well, next week, hopefully we'll be back talking with The Expanse. We're hoping to have Laura back on the show next week, so hopefully our schedules will align and we'll be able to get her on for the first time this season. But until then, take care, everyone.